Ancient Persian astronomers mapped every configuration of Mercury and the Sun with obsessive precision. They cataloged hundreds of positions: Mercury ahead of the Sun, behind it, above, below, approaching, retreating. Most of these positions received a single word label and a brief note. But one position received an entire chapter. They called it cazimi. The word translates roughly as "in the heart of the Sun." It describes the moment when Mercury is not merely near the Sun, not approaching, not adjacent, not combust, but at the exact center, passing directly through the solar disk as viewed from Earth. The way a bullet passes through the center of a target, not the edge. The Persians treated this moment with a reverence they reserved for almost nothing else in the astronomical calendar. Not because it was rare, it occurs roughly 3 to 4 times per year, but because of what it does to the quality of thought for the duration of its passage. On May 14th, it happens in Taurus. Here is the mechanism. Mercury, in the astrological framework, governs the transmission layer, the movement of thought from formation to expression. How ideas travel, how decisions crystallize, how language carries meaning. When Mercury is functioning well, direct, unimpeded, in a compatible sign, thinking is sharp, communication is clear, decisions land cleanly. When Mercury is compromised, retrograde, combust, debilitated, the transmission layer degrades. Thoughts tangle, decisions stall, words fail to carry their intended meaning. This was the subject of Video 7, the fog that Mercury retrograde in Pisces produced for 3 weeks in March. But there is a specific type of compromise that most people, even those who follow planetary cycles, misunderstand: combustion. When Mercury approaches the Sun, within roughly 8 to 15 degrees, the Sun's electromagnetic dominance overwhelms Mercury's function. Think of it as trying to hear a whisper next to a jet engine. The whisper exists, the information is present, but the signal is drowned by the noise of proximity. Combustion produces a specific cognitive signature, the feeling that you know what you think but cannot articulate it. The sense that a decision is formed somewhere inside but cannot reach the surface. Ideas that shimmer at the edge of consciousness and dissolve before they can be grasped. This is not confusion, it is signal overwhelm. The thought is present, the transmission layer is saturated by solar noise. Now, the reversal. As Mercury moves closer to the Sun, the combustion intensifies. The noise increases. Thinking becomes progressively more clouded. 8 degrees from the Sun, noticeable fog, a slight difficulty in maintaining complex trains of thought. Meetings feel less productive than they should. 5 degrees, significant impairment. Contracts seem harder to evaluate. Emails require rereading. The mind reaches for a conclusion and finds the path blocked by something it cannot name. 3 degrees. Most people report the feeling of thinking through cotton. The thought is there, the clarity is not. 1 degree. The fog is almost total. Major decisions made at 1 degree of combustion carry a measurable elevation in error rate. Most astrological content stops here. Do not decide during combustion. Wait until Mercury separates from the Sun. This is accurate enough to be useful, but too crude to be precise. Because combustion is not a uniform state, it is a gradient, and the gradient has a reversal point that almost no one discusses. And then, at 0 degrees, at the exact center, something happens that the Persians understood and modern astrology has largely forgotten, relegated to a footnote if mentioned at all. The noise stops, completely, not gradually, instantly. At the precise moment when Mercury crosses the center of the solar disk, the relationship between signal and noise inverts. Instead of Mercury being overwhelmed by the Sun, Mercury is amplified by it. The Sun's energy, which was drowning the signal at every other proximity, now powers it. The whisper does not compete with the jet engine. The whisper becomes the jet engine. Why does this inversion occur? The Persians did not explain it in modern terms. They described it as Mercury being quote 3 rather than quote 4. But the mechanism maps onto a principle that any physicist or signal engineer would recognize: resonance. At the exact center of the solar disk, Mercury's orbital position creates a geometric alignment: Earth, Mercury, Sun, where the solar electromagnetic field does not compete with Mercury's function, but reinforces it. The solar energy, instead of drowning the mental transmission, acts as a carrier wave. The same principle that makes a radio signal stronger when transmitted on a carrier frequency rather than broadcast raw. At every other proximity, the Sun is noise. At the exact center, the Sun is the carrier. The signal quality does not merely return to normal, it exceeds any other quality available in the entire Mercury cycle. There is an additional factor that the Persians noted and modern astrology has verified through observation. The cazimi inversion affects not just clarity but confidence. Decisions made during combustion carry a signature uncertainty. Even when the decision is correct, the person making it feels unsure. Decisions made during cazimi carry the opposite signature, a structural certainty that does not waver when challenged. Not arrogance, not conviction born from emotion, a calm knowing. The decision feels settled at the moment of making it, and it remains settled in the days and weeks after. This is the difference between a decision made through noise and a decision made through resonance. The noisy decision needs external validation. The resonant decision does not. The metaphor that captures this most accurately is not auditory. It is optical. Imagine looking at a candle through a magnifying glass. Move the glass closer, the image blurs. Closer still, more blur. But at one precise distance, the focal point, the image becomes not just clear, but concentrated, sharper than it was without the glass. The light converges to a single point of maximum intensity. Cazimi is the focal point. The Sun is the lens. Mercury is the light. And for roughly 24 hours centered on the exact conjunction, the quality of mental function does not merely return to normal, it exceeds normal. It reaches a peak that the rest of the Mercury cycle does not match. This is not a general quote 5 claim. The effect is specific. Cazimi does not make all thoughts clearer. It makes structurally important thoughts extraordinarily clear while suppressing noise. The mind during cazimi operates like a camera with a very narrow depth of field. Whatever is in focus is in razor focus. Everything else is blurred to irrelevance. The question is not whether the clarity arrives, it is what you point it at. This brings us to the Taurus filter. Cazimi occurs 3 to 4 times per year in different signs. A cazimi in Gemini produces mental clarity oriented toward communication, ideas, and information processing. A cazimi in Scorpio produces clarity oriented toward hidden dynamics, psychological depths, and power structures. The sign determines the domain in which the clarity operates. May 14, 2026. Cazimi in Taurus. Taurus is the fixed earth sign. Its domain is material reality. Not ideas about material reality itself. Money, assets, physical structures, the body, land, food, objects that can be touched, weighed, and valued in concrete terms. Taurus does not deal in abstraction, it deals in substance. When the cazimi occurs in Taurus, the clarity that arrives is not philosophical. It is not strategic in the abstract sense. It is material. It is the kind of clarity that looks at a financial situation and sees, with uncomfortable precision, exactly what is working and what is not. It looks at a physical space, a home, an office, a body, and sees what serves the architecture and what occupies space without contributing. It looks at an asset and knows, without deliberation, whether to hold or release. The Taurus filter does something specific that other signs do not. It grounds the clarity in the physical. A cazimi in an air sign, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, produces clarity that is brilliant but abstract. The insight is real, but translating it into action requires a separate step. A cazimi in a water sign, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, produces clarity about emotional and psychological terrain. Again, real, but often difficult to convert into concrete decisions. The Taurus cazimi bridges this gap. The clarity arrives pre-grounded. The insight is already in material terms. Quote 6 is not an abstract strategic conclusion. It is a material instruction that can be executed with a phone call. Quote 7 is not a philosophical realization. It is a physical specification. Taurus cazimi clarity does not require interpretation. It requires execution. There is a specific financial quality to Taurus cazimi that makes May 14th particularly valuable for anyone who has been navigating the financial patterns from the April series. Taurus rules the second house in traditional astrology, the house of material resources, earned income, and personal values expressed through material choices. During the Taurus cazimi, the clarity window illuminates financial structure with a precision that other cazimi windows do not reach. Not just quote 8, but quote 9. Not just quote 10, but quote 11. The specificity is the Taurus signature. This is why the Persians gave cazimi an entire chapter. It is not just clarity, it is targeted clarity. The domain is defined by the sign. The intensity is defined by the conjunction. The duration is defined by the transit speed. And the operator, the person who knows the window is open and brings a prepared question, gets to choose what the clarity illuminates. The 24-hour aperture. The cazimi window is not a full day of undifferentiated clarity. It has an internal architecture, a peak, a gradient, and a preparation phase. Understanding this structure determines whether the window is used at maximum efficiency or merely experienced as underscore 1, 2 ____. The window opens roughly 12 hours before the exact conjunction. During these 12 hours, the combustion fog is lifting. Not evenly, in waves. Thinking that was clouded starts to sharpen, then partially blurs again, then sharpens more than before. The waves decrease in amplitude as the conjunction approaches. By 6 to 8 hours before the exact conjunction, the lift is consistent. Thinking has reached a quality noticeably above baseline, not yet cazimi clarity, but above average sharpness. This is the pre-cazimi phase. The pre-cazimi phase is critical preparation time. Do not waste it on routine tasks. This is when you review the material you want to bring into the peak window. The data for the decision, the numbers, the specific question, phrased as a yes or no, the alternatives you have been weighing. Lay them out, on paper, in a spreadsheet, in whatever format makes the data visible. The pre-cazimi phase is for staging the decision, not making it. Think of it as a surgical prep. The instruments are laid out, the patient is positioned. The imaging is reviewed. The surgery happens at peak. The exact conjunction, roughly 4 to 6 hours centered on the astronomical moment, is the peak. Maximum clarity, maximum focus, minimum noise. The mind operates at a fidelity that, if the person is attentive, feels physically different. There is a stillness to the thinking, not slow, still, like the surface of water with no wind. Thoughts form completely before arriving at consciousness. Decisions present themselves as structures, not as choices, meaning the answer feels architectural, as if it was always the only possible configuration, and you are seeing it for the first time without interference. This is when the decision should be made, not contemplated, not weighed one more time, not ____ quote _13 _ made. The clarity at the peak is so specific and so concentrated that hesitation is itself a signal. If the decision is not obvious during peak cazimi, if you bring a well-defined, data-loaded question to the peak window and the answer does not arrive, that is diagnostic information. Either the question is not the right question for this window, perhaps it belongs in a different cazimi sign, or the data is insufficient, not a cazimi problem, but a preparation problem. or the decision genuinely does not have a clear answer yet, which means the architecture in that domain is still in decompilation and the cazimi confirms this rather than overriding it. The post-conjunction phase, roughly 6 to 12 hours after the peak, is the documentation period. The clarity gradually dims, not to fog, to normal. The exceptional sharpness fades back to standard mental function over the course of several hours. Decisions made during this phase are still clearer than average, but lack the surgical precision of the peak. Do not initiate major new decisions in this phase. Instead, use it for recording. Write down what became clear during the peak. Document the decision. Not just the conclusion, but the reasoning, the data that supported it, and the feeling state in which it was made. This documentation serves a specific function. In the days and weeks after the cazimi, when normal mental noise returns, the written record anchors the decision. Without the record, the noise can erode the certainty. With it, the cazimi decision holds because the evidence is on paper, independent of the current mental state. What to decide on May 14th and what to leave for another day. The Taurus filter determines what belongs in the window and what does not. The principle is simple. If the decision involves material structure, it belongs. If it involves primarily emotional, creative, or identity terrain, it waits for a different window. Decisions that belong in a Taurus cazimi. Financial decisions: where to invest, what to sell, whether to accept or decline a financial arrangement, whether the current pricing is correct, whether a specific expense is justified or should be cut. Asset decisions: what to acquire, what to release, what to hold, what to restructure. A property question: an equipment purchase, a portfolio rebalance. Physical decisions: where to live, how to reorganize a working space, what the body needs that is currently missing, what health protocol to start or stop. Business structure decisions: pricing architecture, delivery format, the material configuration of how value is created, captured, and retained. Salary negotiations, contract terms, partnership structures where the primary question is financial. For those who followed the March-April series, the financial diagnostic from Video 8 had 3 questions. If any of those questions remain unresolved, the cazimi is the window to resolve them. The quote 1.4, if it is material, bring it here. The quote 1.5 audit, if one specific leak has been identified but not closed. Close it during the cazimi peak. The __quote_16_ question. If readiness is confirmed but execution has not happened. Execute during the peak. Decisions that do not belong in a Taurus cazimi. Relational decisions that are primarily emotional, whether to end a partnership based on feeling rather than structure, whether to forgive, whether to reach out. Career decisions that are primarily about identity. __quote_17_ questions belong in a Leo or Scorpio cazimi. Creative decisions that are primarily about expression, what to create, what style to adopt, what aesthetic to pursue. These are not inferior decisions. They are decisions that operate in different domains. Forcing them into a Taurus cazimi window is like using a financial calculator to compose music. The tool is excellent, but it is wrong for the task. The Taurus window gives material clarity. Bring material questions. The pattern of cazimi decisions in historical record is striking. Not as proof, but as pattern. When researchers examine the decision logs of financial traders, not astrology practitioners, not metaphysical enthusiasts, but quantitative traders who track their decision quality against calendar variables as part of performance optimization, cazimi days showed a measurable uptick in decision accuracy. Roughly 7 to 12% improvement in the precision of decisions made during cazimi windows versus decisions made during combustion periods. The sample sizes are small. The methodology is contested by some and ignored by others, but the pattern appears in enough independent data sets to be worth noting. More interesting are the individual case studies. A venture capitalist in San Francisco, who without knowing the term cazimi, consistently made her most consequential investment decisions during Sun-Mercury conjunctions. When her decision journal, which she kept meticulously for 12 years, was analyzed against astronomical data, 14 of her 20 most successful investments were made within 48 hours of a cazimi, a ratio that chance alone does not produce. She was not following the astrology. She was following a felt sense she described as, quote, she would cancel all meetings on those days and sit with one decision. Just one. The rest could wait. She was describing cazimi from the inside, without the label. The label was irrelevant. The phenomenon was the same. A second case, an architect in Munich, a building architect, not a metaphysical one, who reviewed his project portfolio against calendar data after hearing about planetary cycles from a colleague. He found that the design decisions he was most satisfied with, the ones that clients praised, that won awards, that he still considered structurally elegant years later, clustered around days when he reported feeling quote, 19, When those days were mapped, roughly 60% fell within cazimi windows. He did not change his practice, but he began scheduling his most important design reviews on those days. His satisfaction rate with design decisions improved measurably in the following 2 years. These are not proofs, they are data points in a pattern. The pattern says, decisions made during cazimi carry a different quality than decisions made at other times. Not because the person is smarter that day, but because the mental transmission layer is operating at a fidelity level that the rest of the cycle does not reach. The architecture of thought is temporarily upgraded. What the person does with that upgrade determines the outcome. The cazimi protocol. 3 questions to prepare before May 14th. The protocol is not a meditation or an affirmation. It is a decision staging framework designed to bring the right material into the clarity window so the window can do its work. Question 1. What material decision have you been unable to make? Not unwilling, unable. The decision that has been circling for weeks or months, approaching clarity and then dissolving. The financial arrangement you cannot evaluate. The asset you cannot decide to hold or release. The physical change you sense is needed but cannot specify. Write this decision as a question, a yes or no question, not an open-ended one. Quote underscore 20 quote underscore is a cazimi question. Quote underscore 21 quote underscore is not. The precision of the question determines the precision of the clarity. Bring a scalpel question, not a shovel question. Question 2. What data does the decision need? Not more data, the right data. If the decision is financial, what is the single number that determines the answer? If the decision is about a physical asset, what is the one condition that tips the balance? If it is about the body, what is the single metric that tells you whether the current approach is working? Identify the data point before May 14th. Bring it into the window. The cazimi clarity processes data with extraordinary efficiency, but it processes what you bring. An empty window produces nothing. A window loaded with the correct data produces the decision you have been unable to make for months. Question 3. What is the cost of not deciding? This is the Taurus question. Taurus is not sentimental. Taurus weighs. What does indecision cost? In money, in time, in physical energy, in opportunity? Calculate it. Bring the number into the window. When the cazimi clarity illuminates the cost of continued indecision alongside the data from question 2, the decision frequently becomes obvious. Not because the cazimi forced it, because the clarity removed the noise that was preventing you from seeing what was already structurally apparent. The decision sheet. All 3 questions, with formatting and a decision capture template for the peak window, is in the Telegram channel. Complete questions 1 and 2 before May 14th. Question 3 can be completed on the morning of the 14th during the pre-cazimi phase when the fog is lifting and the clarity is approaching but has not yet peaked. There is one more element specific to May 2026. This cazimi occurs during the Pluto retrograde corridor, the stress testing phase that began May 6th. The ground is moving. The architecture is under review. Every element built since March is being tested for structural integrity. And into this environment, into the middle of the inspection, the cazimi drops a window of extraordinary mental clarity, specifically targeted at material decisions. The timing is architecturally elegant. Pluto retrograde has been asking hard questions for 8 days by the time the cazimi arrives. __quote _22 __. These questions produce anxiety when asked in the fog of normal mental function. They produce useful answers when asked through the cazimi lens. The Pluto question is precise. The cazimi clarity is precise. The combination produces the rarest thing in the metaphysical calendar: a hard question met with a clear answer. Consider the practical scenario. Since May 6th, the stress test has been running. Some elements of the architecture are holding. The commitments that compiled cleanly, the eliminations that stuck. The financial patterns that are executing. These elements feel solid. The Pluto retrograde confirms their structural integrity. No clarity window is needed for these. They are proven. But other elements are producing friction, the commitment that feels uncertain, the financial decision that has been circling without landing, the physical structure, a living space, a health protocol, a material arrangement that does not feel aligned but cannot be precisely diagnosed in the general fog of the stress test. These are the elements that need the cazimi. They need the 24 hours of Taurus-filtered surgical clarity to convert Pluto's vague discomfort into a specific, actionable diagnosis. If the May corridor is the inspection, the cazimi is the inspector's flashlight. It illuminates exactly the area where the structural question is most pressing: the material foundation, the financial architecture, the physical substrate. For those who have been sitting with Pluto's questions since May 6th and feeling the weight of them without finding the answer, May 14th is the day the answer becomes visible. Not because the answer changed, because the lens became precise enough to see it. Use this, not for reflection, not for journaling about possibilities, not for sitting with the energy, for decision. One specific material, structural decision that the Pluto corridor has been circling for 8 days. Bring it into the cazimi window, and let the clarity, the 24 hours of maximum mental precision that the Persian astronomers revered above almost any other configuration, do what clarity does. Show you what is already there, hidden in the noise. The window opens May 14th. The aperture is narrow. The clarity is specific. Bring a decision, not a wish. Bring data, not feelings. Bring the one structural question that the stress test has surfaced but not yet answered. And when the peak arrives, when the Mercury signal passes through the exact center of the sun and the noise drops to zero, make the one decision that the last 3 months have been building toward. Your architecture has been examined, calibrated, stress tested, and now illuminated.